Hello and welcome to this LinkedIn Live with Alladapt. I'm Hillary Carter. I'm a food allergy mom and advocate. I'm a proud member of FAIR's Board of Governors and a proud member of the Board of Directors for Latitude Food Allergy Care. I'm also host of Take Action with Hillary Carter on the Living Teal channel. Today is honestly such a huge treat for me. I am joined by two huge food allergy powerhouses. Alladapt co-founder and CEO Ashley Dumkowski and Alladapt co-founder and Dr. Kari Nadeau. Ladies, this is such an honor for me. Thank you for being here today.
It's so great to be here with you.
We have so much to talk about, but first thing I want to do is let each of you introduce yourselves. You've done such incredible work in our community. I could never do it justice in a brief intro. So, Ashley, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So I'm a scientist by training and got my professional start really on the investment side and company formation side in biotech and venture capital, and really spent a lot of time thinking about how to build companies around big unmet medical needs. Along the way, actually, while I was at 23andMe, which was one of the companies I was part of, I was fortunate to meet Kari and really saw in the work that she was doing someone who had found a huge unmet need, and she was thinking over the horizon about how the standard of care, which was just really nothing adequate, wasn't enough. And she was innovating and taking things forward. And so the wonderful thing, I think, for me, meeting Kari and working with her is that there's this quote, she'll remember this, that we love so much. It's from the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. When you walk in, there's this beautiful arch, and you look up in the ceiling and it's engraved. It says, "Science uncovers the laws of nature. Industry develops them for the needs of man." And we kind of said, look, that's us. You know, she's this amazing physician scientist discovering laws of nature. And folks like that need to partner with folks like me who can be industry developing those for the needs of man. So I'm very passionate about the work she started. I'm passionate about patients, and I'm so excited to talk with you, Hillary.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, thank you for everything you do. We wouldn't be where we are today without your work. And Dr. Nadeau, please, I think it goes without saying, everyone knows you are just a rock star, but please tell us a little bit about your work and what brings you to Alladapt now.
Well, I feel so compelled to do this because I'm a mom, I'm a parent, I'm a scientist. I get to work with lovely people like Ashley and the whole team at Alladapt. I'm so grateful that the science at Stanford and the science around the world can be brought to be able to democratize drugs and to get drugs out there for patients and families. There is a high unmet need. This is an epidemic of its own right, and we need to offer hope and promise to patients, and the time is now. So I'm so excited that within all of the spectrum of food allergies that people can have, we at Alladapt can now offer something that we know works. And we're taking it forward. And there are challenges. It takes a lot of tenacity and perseverance, but I know we have it because in the end, we are doing it for an amazing cause and to develop good products for people and patients. And food allergy is such a disabling disease. I'm so grateful to be able to be part of it and to have the science to be brought to the people.
Well, I know you have changed already so many lives, including mine. My boys are going through oral immunotherapy thanks to your pioneering work. But I want to back up just a little bit. I want to lay the groundwork for everyone who's watching today. Let's start with the super basics. Tell us exactly what a food allergy is.
Sure. So, and I talk to patients all the time, and also people that don't have food allergies, because it's important to be able to know what's a food allergy and what's not a food allergy. So food allergy is when you take in any amount of the food, and within 2 hours, you can get itchy skin, a little hive, itchy throat, as well as maybe abdominal pain. You could get breathing issues. You might actually vomit. You might get diarrhea, and very rarely do you have a blood pressure drop. But that usually happens in the first 2 hours. A food allergy is not bloating or headache or a fever when you eat a food. That's a food sensitivity, and not that those are not important, but they don't result in anaphylaxis. And the reason why we take food allergies so seriously is because, like I just told you, food allergy can happen the first 2 hours. And as you know, as a mom, Lori, you've probably seen this. But within the first 20 minutes, that's the danger zone, and people can have bad episodes, and that's what we worry about. So we give an epinephrine device, for example, because anaphylaxis can, in rare circumstances, lead to a fatal or near fatal event. So that's why we take food allergy so seriously. But there are certain symptoms associated with food allergy, and there are certain symptoms associated with food sensitivity, and you need to go to a doctor to make sure you know which one you have.
Thank you so much for that. And yes, anaphylaxis is terrifying. I've been through it, and I'm sure many people who are watching today have been as well. And, that's what we're hoping to avoid when we deal with food allergy. How many people are dealing with this? I know it's 32 million in the United States, but this is a worldwide epidemic. What are you seeing as the most recent statistics?
It sure is, Hillary. We used to think 20 years ago that maybe it was in specific countries that we call Western civilization countries, but that's not the case at all. Food allergy has no boundaries. We are now seeing through rigorous epidemiological evidence that came through, and an approach with Australia. Approach is now used with similar questionnaires across the globe. Diagnostics are not getting better. There are now more and more questionnaires being given in many places around the world. There are still some countries we don't know. But for example, China, Japan, they just released their results. 8% of children have milk and egg allergies before the age of 3. Brazil just released their results. 8% of children have milk and egg allergies. So these are global issues. I totally agree, Hillary. We need to understand them and treat them. And what's also very important to know, and as this epidemic continues around the globe, is that more and more people are having multiple food allergies, not just one. We do talk a lot about peanut, but peanut is only a very small percentage of a single allergy. Most people have multiple allergies, and nowadays it's very less likely that they're going to grow out of them naturally. So offering these therapies to Ashley and I are something that we feel compelled to do because we hear the stories around the world, and we hear the need and the anxiety that the parents and the children have. They don't want to just avoid and be afraid of accidental ingestions anymore. They want to do something about it, and they want to be able to get to a level that at least allows them to be protected against accidental ingestions, and that's what we're doing with Alladapt.
And that's going to make such a huge difference, because I've seen that already with my boys with OIT and how it's already changed our lives. We're going to get into sort of the reality of living with food allergies in a little bit, but just a few more follow-up questions on this sort of food allergy landscape. I know in the United States, there are 9 top allergens. Do you see that as sort of similar across the world, or is it pretty similar everywhere?
Yeah, Hillary, it's a great question. I mean, in general, people are allergic to proteins in foods. And when you look at a back of a package of any food, you might see a lot of preservatives in there, but you see kind of the staple items, which is protein, carbohydrates or sugar, and fat. And so what people become allergic to are the proteins. And the proteins that people are very allergic to in foods are those proteins that are highly stable, i.e., they don't come apart in heat or in acid. And so that's why we think the top 9 foods are really those foods that a lot of people have around the globe. Because nowadays, people around the globe are eating similar things because of the ability to share and the internet and the commerce. So tree nuts, peanuts, fish, egg, milk, wheat. Now we have some more seeds that are getting added. Unfortunately, more and more people are developing those types of allergies. The product that we have at Alladapt represents over 90% of the food allergens in the world, not just in the US. And we're very thoughtful and very purposeful in making sure that we covered the globe's allergies. Now, in any one country, there might be a different prioritization. Like, for example, in Italy, it's not peanut as number 1, it's hazelnut as the number 1 allergy. But no matter what we wanted to do was make sure that if someone was going to take our product, they were protected around the world for the most amount of allergens that we were seeing in the epidemiological studies around the world. So that's why we did what we did.
Makes so much sense. And I always just love hearing you explain things, even though I've been in this world for 10 years and I consider myself pretty well researched. When you talk to me, it just always makes such great sense. So thank you for all of that. I want to talk specifically about OIT, and then I really want to get into the work you guys are doing in your specific product. Tell us a little bit, just the basics of what OIT is and what it does.
I consider OIT to be one of the most unique, innovative ways to be able to train our immune systems to become tolerant. It's kind of amazing to me. I'm still very humbled as an immunologist to know that all you have to do is give back the very same things in small amounts that the person's allergic to, and then over time, you educate their immune system. You build back their immune muscle to become tolerant to that very same thing that they were allergic to. And that's the innovation of the immune system. That's the beauty and the brilliance and the intelligence of our immune system. And everyone has an immune system that takes our therapy. Everyone has that ability on our planet because it's human. It's built in to our bodies. And within that structure, I think that OIT is really a great answer because it's through the gut and it really helps tolerate those items that the gut was meant to be tolerant to. It wants nutrition. It wants to take those proteins and see them as natural and give them to our bodies because so many of these beautiful proteins like nuts and fish and eggs and milk, these are nutritious sources of protein. So what OIT is very gently, slowly, regularly, low and slow, we give very small doses initially, smaller doses than anyone could even have a reaction to clinically. And then we build back that immune muscle. It's kind of like carrying weights, but you don't go up to the higher weight until you can do the lower weights and until you can do them well. So OIT is kind of this stepwise process of allowing your body to naturally become tolerant to that same food that you originally were not tolerant to. And with that, it's very specific with allergy. It really does help. You can't do this with other diseases. So again, it's thanks to our immune system. That's the bedrock of this innovation. But part of what we now know at Alladapt and what came with all the pioneering work that went on before, not just at Stanford, but also at many other institutions, is how to dose it, how slow to dose it, what doses to give, how to adjust it, because it's one of those therapies that's highly personalized. And what I'm so grateful for is as we think about OIT, we always work with the regulatory bodies like the FDA and the EMEA, and they have allowed these therapeutic regimens to be highly plastic, to be highly innovative in a way that's personalized to the patient. So if a patient is having maybe a little abdominal pain, we decrease the dose. We don't automatically have to go to the next dose. So that's really thoughtful, I think, and that's really based on pioneering work. So it's personalized medicine, it's innovative medicine, and we know that it works, and we're very grateful for that.
I know that I'm grateful for it, and I know that it works. I've seen it with both of my boys at Latitude Food Allergy Care, coming from your pioneering work, and it's just amazing how it changes a family. So I'm thrilled for this product. Ashley, tell us specifically about Alladapt's ADP 101.
Absolutely. So ADP 101 is an investigational drug product along with a dosing protocol that we're currently advancing through clinical trials. We want to bring a standardized, very well characterized, very well controlled drug and dosing protocol through the FDA approval process, initially in the US, but globally, so that we can give access to people with something that has data, deep data on an approved drug and dosing protocol. ADP 101 is the first drug in our portfolio. It is a drug that is an oral immunotherapy, as Kari described. It is standardized to contain little bits of protein from, it's actually 15 foods that span the 9 food groups that we talk about that cause 90% of allergic reactions. So what that means is that we hope that the drug itself will map itself to the immune needs of the individual patients. So if you are tree nut, or let's say you're peanut, egg, and salmon allergic, then that becomes kind of the warhead of the drug for you, and the rest is nutritive excipients. And if someone else instead is, sesame, peanut, hazelnut, then the drug has mapped itself to them as well. And then, like Kari said, we've really worked, standing on the shoulders of giants from the work that she has pioneered to implement kind of a backbone set of steps to go through the oral immunotherapy protocol of updosing, but then really work to allow that flexibility, because we've spent a lot of time as a company talking to clinicians, parents, patients, and what they'll say is, we can't always climb the stairs every 2 weeks. There's a soccer tournament, or we're going to a family wedding, or it's allergy season. And, my hay fever, or my child's hay fever, is acting up. And so we'd like to just stay at this level a little bit longer. And why not? Right? There's no race here. The point is that, the tortoise and the hare, right? It's the slow and steady that you want to just stick with it. And so we are progressing through a study. Initially, patients go through what's called the Harmony study, which is now fully enrolled across sites of across the United States. And as patients complete the Harmony study, then they have the option of rolling over into a long-term open label extension study called the Encore study. So we have 2 clinical programs ongoing right now, and we're just so excited to be investing in this research so that we can really provide the world with data about how this can work.
It's really so exciting because we touched on this earlier, but it feels like peanut is what gets all of the attention. But the truth really is that so many people at this point have multiple allergens. I know we do in our family. And if you just did one allergen at a time for OIT, it would just take too long. So this is really groundbreaking and exciting. Tell us, what is the main priority? What are you hoping to achieve with ADP 101?
So with ADP 101, our initial goal is to allow patients who are allergic to either one or to multiple foods from amongst those 15 foods that I talked about. So it's 6 tree nuts. We have salmon and cod, shrimp, peanut, egg, milk, wheat, soy, sesame. I hope I didn't leave anything out there. But to allow them to raise their threshold of tolerance, so to desensitize them. And there is an FDA agreed upon endpoint, which is to take people who were very, very reactive using the double-blind placebo-controlled gold standard diagnostic. So we have patients who are reactive to as little as 1 milligram of protein from these foods, beyond peanut. And then at the end, you want them to be able to tolerate 600 milligrams of protein. So you kind of think of that as 2 peanuts. It can be 1 or 2 bay shrimp, a forkful of spaghetti in the case of wheat, a bite of ice cream. The goal with our initial clinical development is really to make people bite-proof, so that they're protected, whether they're at the birthday party or on the airplane or out to dinner. So that chronic burden of perfect avoidance of any contact or consumption can be lessened and really bring a really significant improvement in the quality of life for patients and their families as they raise that level of tolerance. And we want to do it across allergens, so that it's not just we've protected you against only peanut, but peanut and hazelnut, or peanut, shrimp and egg.
That's wonderful. And we could talk forever and ever and ever, and I do want to get to, I want to address it before we move on, which is like the reality and, dare I say, the burden of living with food allergy. And currently what we have for the most part is, you're given a prescription for EpiPen and told to strictly avoid a food or multiple foods. And I know, as a very well-organized type A researched mom, it's really just actually impossible to completely avoid everything all the time. and it's living with a lot of fear, which is very difficult for families. So what are you both hearing, Dr. Nadeau, in your own clinical practice, especially in your trials from the families, how important this is to remove that level of fear and have that safety? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I can start as a doctor and as someone who's been living and breathing this for a very long time. For the past 20 years, I have lived through difficult situations for parents and for families. And you're absolutely right, Hillary. It's okay to say it. Like, it is a burden. It is disabling. We have parents that haven't allowed their children to fly or to go see their grandparents in India for 20 years. And we have people that haven't gone out to eat at a restaurant because of that fear. And it is a real fear. It's justified. It's not just something that is existential or theoretical. It's real. And they know that they could have an accidental ingestion. And because unfortunately people have had experiences where they go out to a restaurant or they go to an airplane, and yes, there's that one seat that still had the peanut on it and their child had a reaction. So this is to be dealt with very seriously by both people with food allergies and by people without food allergies. And that's really important as a community, as a population. We just went through COVID and we're continuing to go through it. But in that same respect, where now a lot of people around the planet know what it's like to live a life where you have to be careful, where you can't touch things that might have gotten touched by someone else, where you have to be careful when you're traveling or people were having a lockdown. That's the life that a lot of people live with food allergies all the time. So we should be compassionate and empathetic and know that we don't have to live in fear anymore. There are answers that to knock on the door, to go through agencies like FAIR, to be able to help give advocacy to patients and families, and the FDA to be able to go to our government institutions and say, we want therapy now. We know that there's good research. We know that therapies are becoming available. We need this for our community now so that we can live in less fear. We can't necessarily say that someone will change their anxiety level, but what we've seen in our studies and what will be looked at in other studies, including Alladapt, is, have you improved your quality of life? Do you have less anxiety? We've shown that. In the end, that's what we want as well, Hillary. We want the biological protection, which is extremely important, and we also want that improved quality of life because people with food allergy really deserve that. They've been living a life with fear for too long, and I truly believe that we can be the change to be able to help people's lives and improve their quality of life.
Thank you so much. Ashley, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to add, so I've been in the food allergy field now for 6 years, but I came from outside of food allergy. And I've worked in areas like neurodegeneration, oncology, rare diseases. One of the things I really admired about food allergy coming in is how well organized food allergy is, how parents like you, Hillary, are very educated. They connect with other parents or other patients really to build a lot of disease understanding within the community. That being said, it is outside of the food allergy, there's a very poor understanding of the severity of food allergy. And that's something that we want it to be a bigger tent. We need more people to understand that this is a serious disease. I'll tell you, when I go out and talk to people, often outside of the food allergy community, I get reactions that won't surprise you, but things like, I know I have to eat gluten-free because I'm on a diet, or it gives me bloating, and aren't all these allergens labeled anyway? And don't schools have to remove peanut? Why is this such a big deal? And outside of the food allergy community, it's not understood that I have patients who've said to us, even, my child doesn't have peanut allergy. If they were going to have one, I wish it was peanut, because at least peanut, there is some awareness. A lot of airplanes will say, fine, no peanuts on the airplane, but God forbid you have an allergy to wheat and you go on the airplane and say, because you remove all wheat, all milk, right? There's so many, the burden of disease goes across more allergens than people appreciate. Reactions can be triggered by less food than people appreciate. And again, the burden of perfect avoidance is so difficult. Reading labels isn't enough. Isolation, we all are sort of wringing our hands about how difficult COVID-associated isolation has been. Isolation that families living with food allergy go through by necessity because they've ridden in the ambulance with their 12-year-old, or it's a 35-year-old who was at a job interview, and there were residue of their allergens in the salad that they were eating, and then they said, I'm in a job interview and I'm feeling hives break out. How do you explain to the interviewer what's going on? I mean, it's this so many situations in life where this accidental exposure to food can cause a reaction. So we are very reverent of the challenges that food allergy patients and families are living with. And we really want to bring a solution to the table. We want to see this field grow so that people appreciate outside of the food allergy community how serious it is. So it's a real passion and mission for all of us at Alladapt.
I can tell you both have so much passion for this, and we in the food allergy community are so lucky to have you working on this. I want to make sure we leave lots of time for audience questions. So we're going to pause here, and I only want to ask one quick thing before we get to the audience. Ashley, can you tell us where people can go find more information about Alladapt and AB-E101?
Sure. So you can go to our website. Our studies are also listed on clinicaltrials.gov. So alladapt.com obviously is a great place. Also follow us on LinkedIn, as we are here, on Twitter. And we're so excited to be part of this conversation.
Great. All right. Well, let's pivot and take some audience questions. Okay, guys. Well, we are getting some great questions in from our audience. And I also want to tell everyone who's here watching, please send a little note in the comment box and I'll make sure we get your questions answered. We have about 10 minutes or so. So let's get right into it. We've talked a lot about really how impossible it is to completely strictly avoid an allergen or multiple allergens. What we have not talked about is epinephrine. And we know that it currently is the line of defense in a reaction, and there are multiple problems with that. Like maybe you don't have your epinephrine with you, or maybe you're afraid to use it. Dr. Nadeau and Ashley, what are you hearing from patients about issues they may have had or fear they have about epinephrine, and why we need a treatment so we don't have to rely on it so heavily?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because so many people are fearful of using epinephrine. And there have been studies done where people that have had severe allergies, a third of them don't actually use it when they should. And importantly is that everyone should carry two at all times, just in case one doesn't work. They should already have that muscle memory of practicing with it so they know how to use any given injectable epinephrine device. There are many different types available, but most importantly, talk to your doctor, get the prescription ahead of time. I know a lot of times this comes around August or September when school is starting, but importantly, make sure you practice and make sure that if your child is over 10 years of age, that they also feel comfortable using it, because that's important to be able to know that this helps. And the epinephrine itself is just like caffeine. There's not a lot in the actual device. But it does help, and there's enough to make sure that it can protect you and reverse your symptoms. And that's what's so important. And you've got to use it early so that within 1 to 2 minutes of any difficulty breathing or protracted vomiting, like 5 times in a row, or dizziness after eating a food, and it has to be known to have a food allergy that you've been exposed to, then you use the epinephrine injectable device right in the side of your leg, and within a couple minutes you're starting to feel better. A lot of people don't even feel it going in because it's such a thin needle. So we tell people, veer on the side of caution. Make sure that you use it if you're worried. Don't not use it. And if it doesn't work within 5 minutes to reverse the symptoms or to decrease the symptoms, use another one, because you're safe to use it. most people, most children have no problem being able to use that amount of epinephrine. It's enough to help you. And then after that, you can go to the emergency room. You can call 911 or call your country's version of emergency care. But it really does save lives, and it's important to have one at all times if you have a food allergy.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. It's so true. Once I had to give epinephrine to my son and he said, "Have you done it yet?" And I was like, "It's already done." It's not painful, and it's such a life-saving device. Ashley, I'd like to ask you, we know that the one thing that is on the market for oral immunotherapy is Palforzia. Can you tell the audience a little bit about the difference between Palforzia and what you're working on at Alladapt?
Sure. First of all, we admire the work that was done by the people who brought Palforzia to the market very much, because that is the first drug ever approved to treat a food allergy. I think the label for Palforzia is focused on pediatric peanut allergy, which means that there is now a whole group of people who can access that protective benefit of going through oral immunotherapy with Palforzia for pediatric peanut allergy. We are looking to develop our drug, and remember, it's still going through FDA clinical studies, so that's a huge difference. We're still investigational and years from approval. But we have, instead of only having peanut in our drug, we have peanut plus all those other allergenic components. And that means that we hope that we can demonstrate rigorous clinical trials, demonstrate the safety and efficacy across whether you have monoallergy to any one of those foods, whether it's peanut or sesame or wheat or shrimp, or if you have multiple food allergy, that we could be effective. So the difference is really in the kinds of allergens that are in the drug that are intended to drive that desensitization.
And as we talked about earlier, if you're a family like mine, where you have a very long list of food allergies, you really would be so lucky to get to have this instead of doing one allergen at a time over a very long time. I have a follow-up question from a viewer who asked specifically about shellfish. Can you please remind us which shellfish allergens will be in this?
Yeah. So our drug is formulated to include protein from shrimp. So shrimp is the allergen that we're targeting amongst shellfish. What's interesting is, depending on how we continue to advance our clinical program, we could conceivably test for whether or not there is cross desensitization to other types of shellfish driven by the shrimp that is in our drug. Because often when someone is allergic to, let's say, crab, lobster, and shrimp, it's not that they have three distinct food allergies. It's that they're allergic to a particular tropomyosin protein that is similar through those three different foods. And that is what the person is reacting to. So if it is a cross reactivity, then you may expect to have a cross desensitization. And they have seen evidence of that in academic work that Kari has done across many different kinds of allergens. But we need to be really rigorous in our development if we are looking for a label claim about cross desensitization, how we would interrogate that clinically.
So that brings up, I'm going to ask one of my own questions and then go right back to our audience who's really sending some great things they want to chat about. But at the very beginning, you talked about that wonderful quote about the intersection of science and industry. And people commented on it. They loved that. But this to me is also what you're talking about here. The fact that you, as a pharmaceutical company, are doing this research, the science behind it is going to be so helpful. I know we're hoping the same sort of thing in my own case. We're treating peanut and hoping that it'll help legume allergies. Like, we're still learning so much about food allergy. So just sidebar, thank you. And the science coming out of this is going to be fascinating. I have another really specific good question about your clinical trial. Someone is asking if you are seeing any comorbidity with eating disorders in your clinical trials. And the reason why I think this is coming up is what we talked about earlier about the fear that comes along with food allergy and people just being afraid to eat food even outside of their own allergens. Are either one of you seeing that either in the trial or in your own practice, Dr. Nadeau?
I'll answer it first, and then I'd like Ashley to answer it specifically to the Alladapt studies. Most importantly is that each person is different and each person comes in with some anxieties, some people don't. Most importantly is that I think in the holistic care that we want to provide, and like you had with your care and latitude, the most important thing, and this is personalized as I spoke about, and that if people have any aversion to the taste, or if you see that they might be either becoming anxious to the degree by there might be an eating disorder associated with that, I think it's really important to prevent any worsening of that idea or that emotion or that response, and being able to talk holistically as a team, making sure that you respond and address those issues, don't put them on the side, and talk to a professional who deals with this. So I think most importantly is to never give up on anyone, make sure this is available to everyone, and that we take each person very carefully as their own being, as their own individual to be able to help. And I think that that care does have to be holistic. That's why I am so glad that there are these types of clinics like Latitude that you did, Hillary, and that your children went through that have that approach, because that's what it's going to take. And I also am so glad that we can think about these things and talk about them on a LinkedIn Live, because this is what we need to do, is be able to be transparent and think ahead of time as to what issues people might have and then address them appropriately.
Absolutely. Ashley, do you have anything you
I
want
would just say that food allergy necessitates that people eat very narrowly. And, I wouldn't say that that is an eating disorder per se, right? It's out of concern, real fear, and real risk that people are undertaking when they eat more diverse food. So they get to a set of foods that they know should be safe, and then they just repeat again and again. One of the things that we've heard doing market research, talking to patients who have gone through oral immunotherapy in other contexts, is that their diet begins to expand, which is not to say that they're expanding to eat the allergens that were risky to them, but that now that they know they're protected to a higher level against the hazelnut and the cashew, they're more willing to try different things because they're not as concerned about the severity of a reaction that could occur. So I think the way I would state it from a positive perspective is we really hope and believe that oral immunotherapy can expand somebody's diet long term, just to feel more freedom to eat more different kinds of foods. And whether that's at home, whether that's in a social situation, whether that's on a trip, that's going to be the kind of thing that could transform somebody's experience, with food. And we are in our clinical studies measuring different quality of life outcomes because we want to understand the actual biologic sort of molecular effect of the drug itself on patients, as evidenced through the food challenges and biomarkers, but also understand, what is the quality of life impact to the patients that they experience after going through oral immunotherapy. Because Dr. Nadeau Kari has shown in her work that patients do have a significant improvement in quality of life after going through oral immunotherapy, and we want to assess that in our studies as well.
I can vouch for it as a food allergy mom and family. It's amazing the difference that it makes, and the new foods you can have and the new experiences that you can have and let your kids have, and that independence. And it's just been life-changing for us. So I'm just excited for everyone here watching and learning about this. I want to tell everyone who's watching, we need to wrap it up pretty soon. These are some very busy ladies. So if you have any last questions, please pop them in the comments. And in the meantime, I want to ask you two, we've talked about how, we need people outside the industry to care and understand about food allergies. And, this is still, Ashley, you've called food allergy the last, what'd you call it? The
last frontier of atopic disease. Exactly.
Yes. And so there's still, you guys are really pioneers here, and there's still so much to do. All of us who are watching, what can we do? What can the food allergy parents do? What can the scientists and the researchers and the doctors and the investors, what do you need and how can we help you?
Well, let me jump in to say the single most important thing that food allergy families can do is continue to organize and to be advocates for themselves, to make their voices heard, so that lawmakers, regulators, and even researchers, direct their research efforts toward this disease, so that the pharmaceutical companies take an interest. None of this happens, none of this research, which is incredibly expensive, can happen without a whole huge set of stakeholders aligned. And it's interesting because food allergy families and patients, when you're in the food allergy community, I often find that, parents, they want people to understand the severity of disease. And so if you talk to somebody outside, you want to say, this is what anaphylaxis looks like. This is why you need to take this so seriously on behalf of me or my child. But on a day-to-day basis, you can't talk to your child or to yourself like you're sick and you have a disability every second of every single day. It's too hard. People don't want to live like victims in everyday life. But we have to balance this in a certain way, because if one acts like it's no big deal to the outside world, then people say, well, it is no big deal. Why are we going to invest? I mean, it costs $1 billion to develop a drug. That money is not going to come to food allergy. It's going to go to other diseases if there isn't an understanding from the broader community that this is a real issue. So the number one thing I think is really for food allergy families to continue to advocate. I know we're going to keep listening. We're going to keep engaging with food allergy families. We need you guys to be a part of the conversation so that all the stakeholders that matter to pull not just our drug, but many drugs forward, so that there's I hope, a whole pharmacopoeia of options for patients over time, so that that's available.
Thank you so much. Dr. Nadeau, do you have anything to add or any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Well, first of all, I agree with Ashley, and I just want to thank you because you're already doing something right now. We're having a LinkedIn conversation. You've initiated this. You've done and worked with Latitude to be able to help your children. You're working and thinking about what Alladapt can bring to the future. And I think as a parent, as citizens of this country and the globe, you do have agency. Your voice matters. So write to the FDA. Tell them that you think it's really important to approve more drugs in food allergy. Tell them that, we're really excited that you've already approved Palforzia and the EpiPen laws went through, but now we need to do better. We need to have more choices for patients. This is an epidemic. This is a huge disease. And we only have one drug, and it's only for a certain age group and one food. We need to do better. And so write to your FDA. Also, write to your congresspeople. Write to them and say, this is a very important disease, because your congresspeople are approving the monies that are given to the National Institutes of Health for research in that disease. And it wasn't until a very small group of very compassionate people met together that Latitude was created, for example. So these things matter. Be persistent. You care about your children. You care about your families. You care about the world. Have that passion move you forward in terms of action. I know it helps me. I know that the path is not easy. There are bumps in that path. But when you know you have your true north, when you know you are pointing the needle in the right direction to do good, to do the right thing, it helps tremendously. But get your voice out there. You have agency to do that via mechanisms now. Write letters, write emails, talk on shows like this, and most importantly, never give up. There is hope and promise that we are delivering on.
That's so wonderful, and just you're obviously so passionate, and we are all so grateful for all the work that you've done. And I just want to give everybody some resources to add on to what you said. If you are looking for a way to get involved in government relations and advocacy, go to foodallergy.org. FAIR's website has so many options for how you can get involved locally, nationally. There's templates, there's really easy to write letters. So go check it out there. We've talked about Latitude Food Allergy Care a lot, which is where my children are receiving treatment. They are expanding. Go to latitudefoodallergycare.com. And if you'd like to see more conversations like this, you can check out my series, Take Action with Hillary Carter, on the Living Teal channel on YouTube. Ashley, last words.
Well, I think thank you, as Kari said, for really hosting this and leading this conversation, Hillary. I think here we are on the Thursday of Food Allergy Awareness Week. I think conversations like this need to happen outside of Food Allergy Awareness Week too. So I hope this is the beginning of more and more conversations, again, where we just keep making it a bigger tent, have more people understand the severity of this disease, the need for more treatments. And I hope we look back at this years from now and say, can you believe it was ever like that? That first of all, that people didn't really understand the disease, and can you believe that we didn't have therapies? And look where we are now, where we have so many people who are now being treated. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. It has been my greatest honor to speak with you both. And we mentioned earlier where to find everybody, but keep in touch with Alladapt by going to their website or checking them out on social media. And we'll look forward to lots of news on this exciting new frontier. Thank you both so much. And happy Food Allergy Awareness Week to everyone. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.